Welcome to the TOEFL listening section. In this part, you will hear one or more conversations in an academic or campus context, such as a discussion between a student and a professor or between two students. You may take notes while listening. Listen to part of a conversation. You will hear it only once, so listen carefully. After the conversation, you will answer questions about what you heard. Some questions will ask you about main ideas and details. Others will ask about implied meaning, speaker attitude, or how ideas relate to one another. Use both what is stated and what is implied to answer.
Good afternoon, Dr. Morris. Thanks for meeting me during office hours. I wanted to talk through my paper on the ethics of artificial intelligence, and especially the moral implications of autonomous decision-making systems.
Good afternoon, Aaron. That is a rich topic. Tell me which aspect you want to focus on. Are you looking at a specific application or the general moral theory?
I was thinking of combining both. For examples, I plan to use autonomous vehicles and predictive policing. I want to analyze how responsibility and accountability are distributed when machines make decisions without constant human intervention.
Those are excellent case studies. Autonomous vehicles highlight direct physical harm and split-second trade-offs. Predictive policing shows how biased data can lead to systemic injustice. Both raise questions about fairness, transparency, and responsibility.
Exactly. One thing that confuses me is the language about moral agency. Should we think of an autonomous system as an agent that can be morally responsible? Or is it just a sophisticated tool and only the designers and operators can be blamed?
Philosophically speaking, there are two routes. Some argue that only beings with intentions and consciousness can be moral agents. Others propose a functional attribution of responsibility, where we treat systems as agents for legal and practical reasons. But the mainstream view in applied ethics is to focus on human responsibility upstream.
When you say upstream responsibility, do you mean the designers, the companies, or regulators?
All of the above. Upstream responsibility covers designers who choose training data, engineers who set objective functions, managers who deploy systems, and regulators who set safety standards. For example, the Compass Recidivism Risk Assessment is a cautionary tale. The company and the courts that relied on it share blame for failing to detect bias.
I read about Compass. It was biased against certain racial groups. But some people argue that if the model reflects historical data, the model is only reporting patterns. Is that a valid defense?
Not a persuasive ethical defense. Historical data reflects past injustices. Reproducing those patterns without correction perpetuates harm. Ethically responsible design requires intervention to mitigate bias, not just asserting statistical objectivity.
That makes sense. In my draft, I want to include normative frameworks. Should I use consequentialism as one lens and deontology as another to evaluate outcomes and duties?
Yes. Consequentialism helps analyze aggregate harms and benefits, like accident rates with autonomous cars. Deontology raises questions about rights and duties, such as whether it is permissible to sacrifice one person to save several. Both perspectives are valuable and sometimes lead to different policy recommendations.
Speaking of autonomous cars, the trolley problem always comes up. Do ethicists treat that thought experiment as central to real-world policy?
The trolley problem is a useful pedagogical tool, but it is limited. Real-world autonomous decision-making systems face uncertainty, sensor error, and legal constraints. Ethicists emphasize the need for value alignment, predictable behavior, and meaningful human control, rather than solving hypothetical moral dilemmas alone.
What do you mean by meaningful human control?
Meaningful human control means that humans retain oversight of critical decisions and there are mechanisms for intervention, audit, and explanation. It also means humans must understand the system sufficiently to accept responsibility. For autonomous weapons or lethal systems, many philosophers argue that removing meaningful human control is ethically impermissible.
You mentioned explanation. How realistic is explainability with complex machine learning models? Some of these models are essentially black boxes.
Explainability is challenging, but not impossible. Techniques for interpretable models and post hoc explanations exist. Ethically, we should demand auditability and documentation of design choices and data provenance. If a model cannot be audited, it should not be used in high-stakes contexts without strict safeguards.
That ties into accountability. If an autonomous medical diagnosis system makes a harmful recommendation, who is liable? The hospital, the software company, or the doctor who relied on it?
Liability is complex. Ethicists recommend layered accountability. The manufacturer owes a duty of care for design safety. The deploying institution must ensure proper validation in their context. Clinicians retain responsibility to exercise professional judgment. Laws will need to evolve to clarify shared liability while ensuring victims can seek redress.
Are there concrete policy suggestions I should include in the paper to make it practical?
Yes. Proposals include mandatory algorithmic impact assessments, independent audits by third parties, requirements for diverse training data and documentation, opt-out mechanisms for users, and legal standards that assign responsibility across the design and deployment chain. Also, promoting public deliberation about value trade-offs is important.
I like the idea of algorithmic impact assessments. Would that be similar to environmental impact assessments?
Exactly. An algorithmic impact assessment would analyze potential harms, affected populations, mitigations, and plans for monitoring. It would be required before deployment of any high-stakes autonomous decision-making system.
One last question. Some people talk about granting rights to advanced AI. Should that be part of an ethics discussion about autonomous systems?
Discussing moral status is philosophically interesting, but for current policy, it is premature. Most ethical work now should focus on human consequences, preventing harm, and ensuring justice. If systems ever required true consciousness, we would need a different conversation. But our current priority is accountability and fairness.
That helps a lot. I will structure the paper with case studies, ethical frameworks, and policy recommendations. I will also include concrete examples like Compass, predictive policing, and autonomous vehicle scenarios.
That sounds like a solid plan. Be sure to define technical terms like bias, explainability, and value alignment for readers who are not familiar with them, and end with practical recommendations for designers and policymakers.
Thank you. I will revise the draft and bring it back to your next office hours for feedback.
Excellent. I look forward to reading it.
Listen again to part of the conversation. Then answer the question.
When an autonomous car chooses between two harmful outcomes, we need clear rules about accountability and whether designers or the machine are morally responsible.
This concludes the conversation portion. For more TOEFL practice tests and study materials, visit Spinta.org.